Hi, Saima. Thank you so much for making the time to be here.
Hey, Roop, it's great to be here for the second time in a row this time.
In unfortunate circumstances, however, I wish we didn't have to have this conversation, but it is important to have this conversation because, like I was telling you prior to going live, I am watching this on the sidelines. I am seeing comments. I'm seeing posts that you're putting up, and other Muslim leaders in the Muslim community they're putting up, and it's a shock to me. It is something that I haven't ever seen. It is you're talking about self-defense lessons. You're having conversations about having to carry pepper sprays. You're having conversations about, um, you know, just not wearing hijabs if needed, and those are I can't wrap my head around those conversations. So I don't know what it must be like for you to be in the midst of everything. So let's unpack this, and we will be joined by Dr. Sayed and Ahmed Nadeem Memon, who is the president of PCA at a later time as well. So let's start with the conversation about how this all started with the terrorist attack in London, Ontario. Obviously, Islamophobia didn't start at that point, but that's when these series of recent attacks intensified around that time. So talk about it, unpack it for me.
Roop, I'll go a little bit back further than just the London attack, and I'll go beyond just feeling shocked because we've been shocked for the last 50 years. It's a way over time that we get over that I am shocked and horrified face. I mean, this is the time that we need to seriously think about how to protect ourselves. That phase is now done and gone. The London attack is people have already forgotten about it because there's been so many attacks since then. And this didn't even start with the London attack. It didn't even start with, these black hijabi Somali women that have been attacked in Edmonton. Today was number 11. 11 women have been attacked in Edmonton alone since December 2020. Everything from them being grabbed from the back and thrown to the floor, to being yanked out of their cars and beaten up, to being have their hijab ripped off, to being forced into a tree with their tooth falling off because they were knocked unconscious. These are not just recent happenings. I was at the University of Calgary during 9/11. I saw the similar things happening right after when the attacks on Iraq were happening, right after 9/11. We have been seeing every time there is a huge government, what should I say? I wouldn't even say attack, but hostility towards a Muslim country. It happens right here as well. People start being hostile towards Muslim in Canada too, in the US too. Now, if you think about why the recent rise happened, what's the latest one that has been happening in the world? It's the Palestinian conflict.
Palestine. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So when you see, what's that one word that people always relate to Palestinians or Palestine? They relate it to Muslims, to Islam, even though there is a ton of Christian Palestinians that people seem to forget that there are there. Even Jewish Palestinians, even before the formation of Israel, they're all there. But then people keep on relating Palestinians to Islam. So when they see that these hundreds and thousands of Palestinians are getting killed, and our government says we still stand by with Israel, it has a very unconscious brainwashing that happens right here in Canada. Says, hey, if our government is okay with that, we should be okay with hurting these people too. And I know this is a bold statement to make, but I'm making it because I want you all to think. Think deeper. Think beyond what you see just on the surface level, what is just on the shallow waters. Why is this happening? Go to the root causes. Our government, our media constantly keep on relating every time Muslims are trying to defend themselves as terrorists. So one man's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. There's that, a proverb. But in here, it is basically people trying to protect their homes from not getting demolished, from not getting expelled from their homes that they've been living for 50, 60 years, from not getting evicted by people that have come over and colonized their lands. So it's happening over there. These global realities is now becoming our local reality. So if the government, the media, Hollywood, Netflix, you name it, they keep on perpetuating that over there, why would people here not feel the same? And you might think that, you might say, well, we have a very Muslim friendly liberal government, they're not like the conservatives were. But I would disagree with the premise when it comes to Israel Palestine. Before, Harper was very, very hostile towards Muslims. But when Trudeau came over, or even after Harper, it was Obama, and everybody thought there's going to be this big change happening around the world. But it was just that, the words changed, but the policy remained the same. Then after Obama came Trudeau. Again, the words changed, but the policy remained the same. And then came Trump. The words changed, the policy got even harsher. But guess who kept on throughout this whole time, kept on getting thrown under the bus? It was Muslims. So did you think that, after decades on decades of getting our brains conditioned to be called terrorist, to have our religion, our faith be constantly marked as terrorism, you think this won't have an effect on the regular public that are already kind of, leaning towards the far right, and uses this as like, okay, you know what? These are our enemies. This is the other. These are who are taking our jobs, changing our country, changing our lifestyle, although I don't know anybody's whose lifestyle I'm changing. Do you have any issues with me being here, that you can't go to a church, that you can't practice your faith, that you have to dress differently, or you have to follow a different law? Nothing. Life goes on for them as well as anything can be. But if you have a hijabi women now walking down the street, taking an evening walk with their family, you can get hit and run, mowed down by a truck. If you have a man with a beard and a cane walking for their morning walk at 5:30 in the morning in his neighborhood, the walk that he takes every morning now has become a fear factor for him. Strangers are coming and catching him and trying to knife him, cut him down, hold him down, and cut his beard off. We have a woman just today, a couple of hours ago in Edmonton, she was driving down in her car, and now a guy just shot at her car while she was driving. So here we are, Rube, we're arguing whether we should be able to use hairspray or pepper spray or dog spray or bear spray, while those people have already graduated from using knives to trucks to now guns. So now we're done with the whole shock and awe and horrified phase. Now we have to start thinking about self-defense, because the government, the police, in my eyes, they have completely failed in preventing these hate crimes. We have to now learn how to protect ourselves.
Yeah, you made a statement. You said, if government and police, they cannot protect us, what do we do? And that's a very strong statement.
Think about it. This has been happening. I don't see any police officers coming to our mosque in the women's section and talking to us, giving us some confidence that, hey, I know you guys are worried. I know you guys are scared shit these days of what's happening, but we are here. I don't see any police having any sort of town hall meetings in the police headquarters, teaching us how to be alert, how to defend ourselves. What can we do when we face a situation like this? I don't see any government making any statement, attack after attack after attack happening. They did the big statement after London, and now it's history. Everything is forgotten. So you see, I don't see them making the extra effort that is needed during unprecedented time. You need to get out of your regular daily work and do something unprecedented, because the community is asking for it. They're scared. They're worried. Our men are asking their wives to take their hijab off. Did you ever hear of that? I mean, that's how bad things are right now. So if they are not doing anything, and even if they are they're doing it behind closed doors, where the public has no idea what kind of steps they're taking. So I have no confidence. My friends who are facing this have no confidence. So then what do we do? So that's what I want to talk about today, is the idea of how can we defend ourselves. And I have to tell people, self-defense is a right. it is a right, and I want to read this out to you so that everybody knows that this is what is going on, and this is this. Um, I want to read this out to you. Self-defense is a well-known defense in Canadian law, justifying the use of force to repel an attack. It is an ancient common law that was incorporated into the first Canadian Criminal Code in 1892. The law discourages persons from taking the law into their own hands. Still, the law does permit men to defend themselves. So it is entirely legal in Canada to defend yourself and others using reasonable force, up to and including lethal force. However, most police forces, including the RCMP, will generally charge you and let the courts determine whether or not the force was reasonable in the eyes of the law. So this is very important for us to know, because we're in such a phase that still in that shock and awe phase, Rube, that we can't even think that, oh my God, you want me to like defend myself? You mean I actually have the right to defend myself? Yes, you do. And you also have to learn that if you see somebody getting attacked, that bystander intervention, it is very real. You have to now do it. It is your duty to not just call 911, to at least be in between and make sure that person is protected. So these are things that we need to be talking about right now. We need to be making the community aware of.
It's disgusting that we are at this point in Canada, that we're even having this conversation, that we have to defend ourselves when we have to go out, when we're just going out for a walk because of the way we're dressed.
This is the reality, and it's no longer even just for us Muslims. This is for everyone. We saw what happened with Rajan Sawhney's daughter. We can go about and say that this is a Muslim issue, but it isn't. First Nations, Sikh people, Black people, Asian people, if you count all the minorities group, it is happening every day to one person or the other. And what we see are only the ones that are actually reported. We don't even see the ones that are happening every day, in the malls, in grocery stores, on the streets, where people just somehow ignore it and let it go and just move on. They don't bother reporting. So think about to what extent it's happening now.
At this point of conversation, I'll bring in Amir Nadeem Meminji, who is the president of PCA. Welcome. Thank you so much for making the time. And I'll also bring in Dr. Naweed Syed, who they're both known names in Calgary community, and they have been very vocal about self-defense as well. I know you have been having conversations about pepper spray, if it's legal or if it's not legal. Can you shed some light on it? Who wants to go first?
I think Dr. Naveed was working with the RCMP about the legality of the sprays, so he can have a quick word.
Yeah. So, thanks, Rupa, for having us, and your courage and your actually very opportunistic, session on this particular topic is really most welcome. And I think you have done this, out of your goodness of your heart, but also of the goodness of the community and Canada in general. We love this country, and this is home. And I think when it is home, people will do everything to protect it and defend itself and the people who live within this. So I think, Saima had very elaborately gave you a historical perspective. She gave you what the mindset has been for years, and we look at 100 years back, then the natives are still fighting to get their justice done. So I think sometimes it is said that weakness invites attack, and if you wish peace, you have to be really prepared for it, the war, right? If England and France, they hadn't neglected their defense, Hitler would have never really attacked them. So I think it's a fundamental right for the community to prepare itself so that it can protect its own people. That's the number one thing, and I think this is what the debate has been, whether people should prepare. I, on the other hand, also think that it is the responsibility of the law and order in the country, in the agencies, to protect all citizens. It's not the vigilante, situation where we all take up, prepare ourselves with arms and then and try to protect. It creates state within the state, which is not conducive to the growth of a society. Because if you take out a huge group, and now Muslims are, significant majority in Canada. They are doing very well. They are law-abiding citizens. They work hard. They make their livings through hard work, and also they are doing very well academically in other positions as well. And with this comes resentment. With this comes really those people who will try to find targets. They will even get even more active. So I think Saima talked about Palestinian issues, and that is one of the fundamental issue as well, because there are, in the biblical sense, the mindset that to expedite the return of Messiah, there needs to be a bloodshed in Middle East, especially in the Jerusalem area. So they fuel these right-wing Islamic, neo-Nazi, anti-Islamic elements. They fuel those elements to really create mayhem in the world. And so I think the issues are very complicated. But going back to the point of self-defense, where people should be prepared, I think that we are encouraging and urging government to do their due diligence, as Saima talked about. They should come and reassure people that it is our job and our duty to make sure all citizens with equal rights in this country are protected and defended. On the other hand, I think it's important for community, as Saima pointed out, the violent crime in Alberta in Western Canada are worse than the rest of the country. By the time half an hour passes in your program, there are almost 17 violent crimes committed. Now these issues are shifting towards minorities, and people are talking about glorifying freely through social media all these hate crimes. So I think people need to really be prepared to see and sense when they see hate crime being committed, and not to laugh it off and move away, because it's not moving away. The other thing is that the community really need to come together to be able to prepare itself, both mentally, protect its own premises, and then the people. I think we should not be ashamed of our faith and religion, and we should not resort to violence or having to resort to violence to really fight violence. This is a great country. We as a taxpayers also pay $3 billion for correctional facilities where all these people who are charged with hate crimes go to. So I think we pay the double price. It's a loss of life, it's an insult, it's a mindset, it's an oppression in people, and their constant worries. When you go for a walk, you see a truck coming, all of a sudden, everything flashes in front of you. But as a citizen of this country, I think we demand the government, law agencies and the RCMP to provide protection to our people. Otherwise, everybody will start to take law in their own hands, which is really not good for the country. And we know that when you, take these people out of the mainstream where they don't become taxpayers, rather they become the tax burden.
And you've been in conversation with the RCMP?
We are actually preparing a very comprehensive document for the government in general. We don't want to pinpoint at any one particular agencies, but we would like to make it come from the government. And the government next month is having a summit on these issues, whereby we have put forward the ideas that, our people needs to be protected, and then their special forces be, granted in terms of, police, also patrolling our premises, and also to go after those who are really inciting violence against Muslim as well. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach. It's not just the one. And, we would also like RCMPs to come and even provide special sessions for our people, especially women, how to protect themselves as well. So I think it will be done from the top level, coming down to RCMP and the local law and jurisdictions.
Thank you. And what is your organization doing at a local level, Miminsab?
Well, as Saima said, that damage has been done, and it's been a very old problem through news and media that we were portrayed as stereotypes. So that they say in the advertisement that if you show somebody advertisement for a certain number of times, people start believing it. So that's what happened with us. And again, it's one major part is Islamophobia, but also it's the white versus browns, because we had a long-term government and the next door neighbors, and they elevated it. And obviously, we have very soft punishment for these crimes. So that also added fuel to the fire. And now here we are, that we are trying to learn to save ourselves. Then what's the point of living in this country that we all came and other peoples are coming? And we came on the request of the government that they need people in this country so that we can raise the economy and pay taxes, and so that the pension and retirement funds can be generated for everybody. So what next? Like Dr. Saab said, that the government is being approached, but as Sama said, that they are very slow, very late. I was laughing when I saw a government ad program that these community centers and mosques can apply for a 15,000 grant, but in fall, and then they can put some cameras and other things on their walls, to protect themselves. So who is going to wait till fall? The damage is being done every day, every moment, every hour. So some organizations are arranging some self-defense courses, but with our collaboration, but they are costing a lot of money. There's no subsidy for that. So it's very difficult to get that unless the police or the other some organizations volunteer and provide those programs. But again, the question going back to that, are we willing to live like that? Are we kids can go to the schools, to parks, to anywhere? We are stranded at our home. We are now in an offensive mode, and this lip service is not helping. So 5-10 years of damage, it will take a couple of years to strongly work on that, like interfaith dialogues, or I would say go back to the roots and go to the schools and include these things in the syllabus to the kids, that we are all one, we are all the same, and everybody have done sacrifice to come to this country. Some are old immigrants, some are new immigrants, so there's no difference. So unless that mind is not clean, mind is not wiped, these things will keep on happening. No punishments, they just get prey on the weak and vulnerables, single persons. And unfortunately, the people stand by us. They just don't intervene and interfere because they are scared of those knives and those things. So based on the community level, we have to work out and figure out, that what we can do. Maybe we community organizations can have a joint events after the on first, the events will open. So why not have some cooking class with the white people, Caucasian people, and us, tell them how to cook the butter chicken and stuff like that. So we have been isolated, little bit of our own fault. We don't volunteer much. Exceptions are there, but they think that we are terrorists, and obviously they are scared of us as well. But it's our duty as well to come forward and just meet and greet with them and tell them we are common human beings. I'm guilty of that as well. When there is an office party, we just go and try to find our own people and sit beside them on the table. So
yes, sorry to interrupt you there. I don't think you should carry any of that guilt at all. Realistically speaking, I don't think any one of us should be carrying that guilt. And what I hear, the common theme from everyone speaking now is the emotional despair, the emotional distress. There is this, of course, there's this fear of stepping out and getting physically injured, but then there's this emotional distress as well. Like Saima mentioned earlier, these are our sisters, these are our women and men too now. These are people who we know, the families that we know who are getting impacted personally. And also what Saima mentioned, and I think I read it on Anila Azim's post as well on Facebook, where husbands are telling their wives or daughters and sisters to remove their hijabs, or women themselves are choosing to remove the hijabs because they have to save themselves and protect themselves. So they have to choose between their physical safety and their emotional and their religious their faith. So talk to me about that emotional distress, Saima.
I give you an example. Yes. Quick example. After 9/11, there was terror everywhere, and we were portrayed as terrorists, at that time. So a lot of women went to our imam in Southwest Masjid and asked them that, shall we remove our niqabs and hijabs at that time? And Imam Saab said that, tell me one single case in whole Canada that you guys have been victimized because of the 9/11, and then I will issue a fatwa or order that, yes, you can change it. But at that time, Canada stood very strong with us, and not a single case happened. Everybody was coming and sympathized with us, that, guys, this is a very wrong thing happened. Are you safe? Are you feeling safe? Those days are gone. And then obviously, and next 20 years or 15 years.
I will disagree with you on this one, because when I was a university student during 9/11, I would see how women would get thrown while they were waiting for the bus stop at Craigie Hall. Full beer cans were being thrown at them. So there was lots of incident of very violent Islamophobia on the women. It's just that we didn't have social media at that time, so people don't have those records. But I know from talking to people sitting in Mac Hall and McEwen Hall at the University of Calgary's, that how many of these incidents were happening. But even to answer Roop's previous question, the emotional distress, and I'll tell you something, like, we can tell ourselves that removing the hijab will stop the hate crime, or us going and meeting with white people would reduce the hate crime, or us doing more community work, more charity work, or being more successful in our professions would reduce it. None of that, because that is not the cause of any of this. The cause is how our government, our media has been portraying us, our causes internationally, and how it reflects on us locally. So until or unless from the top this stops, it won't stop to the bottom. Just like how Amr said, when you advertise a lie enough times, people will start believing in that lie. Now, people have believed in that lie. And remember, when Trump was talking about the China virus, he kept on saying the COVID as the China virus. So people started hating on Asian people. They were like beating up old Asian women and men when they would see in New York, And then the Chinese community really rose up and came out, and Chinese people rarely come out and protest until or unless something really big and bad happens. So, and this is what happens every time. And same with Trump, when he was putting on the Muslim ban, you can get anybody to come from any other country and seek refugee status or immigration except from Muslim countries, so-called. So these are things that has been happening on a systemic level. And now it has changed from systemic Islamophobia to violent Islamophobia on the streets. So until we stop the systemic Islamophobia, no matter what we do, it won't change things. But we can still do things if it just to make us feel like, on the street level, on the community level, we're reaching out. I just finished a phone call with the Akram Juma Mosque where they called me and said, Saima, what we're planning to do on July 1st, everything is opening up. We can invite non-Muslims to come and be in our mosque to see how we pray, to see what we're going through, to get to have a cup of tea with us and know that, we're afraid, but you shouldn't be afraid of us to a point that you can't even stand up with us, or you just stay quiet when attacks after attacks are happening. We're asking the mosque, the police to hold self-defense classes, and it has to be free, because the people that is happening to are people that are walking to work. These are not going to be people that can afford the self-defense classes. So we have to offer it for free of cost, and offer it frequently, and offer it in a really robust way that it's not just physical self-defense, but hate crime self-defense too. What happens when somebody gives you a religious or racial slur? How do you stand up to verbal abuse? How do you stand up to verbal abuse in different situations? And then if it is escalating to a physical assault, how do you stop it with like a physical MMA or whatever other martial arts? So we need help with all of this on a community level, right? But most importantly, we need our government to stop this systemic Islamophobia.
I have a comment here that I received when I first announced this live. Mandeep Hundal, she said, it's not just the Muslims. All of us minorities have to stick together and try to get the government policies changed, because anyone can be targeted because of perceived ethnic and religious identity and or physical appearance. Would any of you like to comment on that?
So I would agree with that. I think, you saw that after 9/11, many of our Sikh brethren were attacked because they were wearing turbans and they had beards, right? So, and now you have seen one of our minister's young daughter, because she is Asian origin, she was attacked as well. So I think all communities need to present a united front. We have to protect each other and also look after each other. In the longer run, really the issue is that it is a Canadian. We love this country. It still is the greatest country in the world. And we will do everything in our capacity to make it even a greater country that it can be. But to become a great country, it's important that all citizens have equal rights. They are protected. And then, the issue, as Saima was also pointing out, is that the internalization of this issue really does not bode very well for Canadian growth and prosperity, because now our younger generation, considering all of this victimization aspects of it, is becoming internal. So the problem is becoming internal. People then become biased towards their own people. They become biased against other people. So, in the academic settings and the research funding, businesses, people tend to become state within the state. And that is extremely dangerous. We have learned from history what has happened to our Native Americans. They've been kind of put on the reserve and isolated from everybody else. And as a result, what happens is we take out a large diaspora of people who could contribute to the greater good of country, and collectively, not in their own ways. So I think it is really important that we all stand together, we all stand united, and we do not take the law in our own hands. And we invoke the law as per our fundamental citizenship right. This is our right, that the government, the law agencies, and RCMP protect our people as well. I think being prepared for something is 90% of the battle already won. So when we go out, we need to be aware that these are really tough times. These are challenging times, and this thing is becoming worse. I think the issue really is that a constant, as Saima rightly pointed out, constant bombardment, either in the negative narrative or in the positive. People are saying that, look, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. And Islam is also fastest growing in North America as well. The Muslims are actually doing very, very good in Europe as well. So the fear is created that slowly and gradually they will take over. They will take over in all different sectors, which is, absolute nonsense, because, Islam is a religion of peace, and it teaches peace, and violence against anything is strictly prohibited. And I cite the examples when Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was tortured, he was hurt, he was kicked out of his homes, he was complete social boycott for almost 3 years, to the extent that his companions were having to eat their own shoes. And then he was kicked out of Mecca to go to Medina. Multiple wars inflicted upon him. And, they used to throw garbage upon him. They used to hurt him, harm him. And when he came back 10 years later, and he was the victor with 10,000 of army. Somebody chanted at that time, "Now is the day." And then the sentence, actually, phrase used at that time was a yawmul lahma, meaning today is the day of revenge. And then Prophet immediately said, no, today is the day of rahma, means peace. So I think Islam by nature is a religion of peace. We should resolve these issues peacefully, not through violence, not through any other means. But I think it's important for us that we be provided with protection that we deserve as the citizen, with all legal rights as well as constitutional rights.
Thank you for that. So to wrap up, if you can all please tell me, what do you think are the short-term solutions? We've established the problem. We know this is happening. These hate crimes are happening, period. We're not going to discuss that. We're not going to even accept if someone tries to debate that. This is not even up for debate anymore. These are happening and this is the reality. So give me briefly, if you can tell me, what are the short-term solutions that you propose and what are the long-term solutions that you propose? So let's start with Saima.
I would propose in the government level, the short-term solution would be when these international conflicts are happening, especially when it comes to Palestine, our government starts changing its tone. There is no longer both sides. If you see that the occupier is killing, torturing, bombing innocent civilians, call it like what it is, a massacre, a crime against humanity, and stand up and be a good friend to both the countries, and please make those wars stop and don't make one side into terrorists and the other side as if they're defending themselves when they're the ones doing all the killing. So that when you change the global narrative, you'll see the local narrative changing as well. In the community side, there's a few things we can do. Number one, out of these 12 hate crimes that happened in Edmonton, so far I've heard about the first 8. Not a single one of them actually got charged with hate crime. The police sees hate crime as there's 4 categories, like all out genocide, and then there is 3 other categories. But when it comes to seeing the street assaults, verbal abuse, they don't even see it as hate crime. So when these go to court, all that police says is just tells the judge to give a stiffer sentence. So we need to call them, charge them, convict them as hate crimes, and it should come with very stiff sentences. So if we don't call them out what it is, there's no deterrent. Nobody's stopping them. And of course we talked about a whole bunch of other solutions, about self-defense courses, about being prepared. Dr. Naveed Said 90% of the work is being prepared before the attack happens. But also as a bystander, as somebody who's not a Muslim, who's witnessing this, it is really imperative that when you go out, you need to always be prepared as well. If you see something, say something. Try to stop it with your words. If not with your words, at least come and stand in front of the victim and help them and protect them. Call 911. While you wait, you do what you can to protect them. So this is just some of the solutions.
Thank you. Amr Sab?
Yeah, like Saima concluded very well, but saying the government that change the tone, that brings the onus back to us, that we should be calling our MLAs, MPAs, writing to them. We are not doing much work in that field. So we have to create pressure on the government, their members of parliaments, to change their mental thoughts, and pressurize them, to pressurize the premiers and the prime ministers, to change their narratives, So first of all, we should be creating pressure. Second is don't go into survival mode, guys. That is the brutal thing you can do to your next generation. Don't go to the survival mode. Be brave, be outside. Don't change your habits. Don't change your your routines, that's what those people want. They are just few people, and they just are creating that unrest and havoc just to put us back into the corner. So don't go and fall into their trap. Just keep doing what we are being doing, but keep on increasing the pressure on the government. That's the best thing we can do, the only thing we can do.
Dr. Naveed.
I think, Saima had really put it into different layers, and one is the government layers. Unfortunately, 100 years have gone, and the truth and reconciliation is really still on the table. The government has not really, they only paid the lip service. They, of course, you could see that there is no action being done even today. So I think this is one thing that we could put pressure on the government, but that mindset, the political mindset, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. And so that's one thing. That's but we need to continue to work with government, as Saima pointed out, stricter punishment. Call it as it is. You cannot really cover it up saying, oh, this is a crime or street crime. It is actually a hate crime. It should be labeled as such. So I think the government needs to not only create policies, but also make sure that those policies are implemented in a meaningful and in an effective way. So that's one thing. The other thing for us is really that I believe the language of victimization is the biggest victimizer. We need to make sure our younger generation does not fall into this intergenerational trauma and oppression that our native population has been put into. I mean, when we do experiments, even on animals, if a rat is never exposed to a cherry blossom, but if it is exposed for the first time and it is electrically shocked for the rest of its life, it is afraid of cherry blossom smell. If you take its babies, they have never been exposed to cherry blossom or shock. Whenever you expose them to cherry blossom, they will be shocked and they will be afraid. They have this fear, anxiety, trauma, and you can do this intergenerationally. These animals will always respond that way through intergenerational trauma. That is not good for Canada. The government has to realize that if it wants to make this country the greatest country that it can be, it cannot marginalize or not take notice of Muslims and their sufferings and what they're going through, because this will come back and bite them really big time, even bigger time than what we have been really facing in terms of our native population. We need to go back to schools, 101 schools, learn things that we learn in kindergarten and build an education system for children to teach them that, hate crime, what is hate crimes. I still recall when after Second World War, our brethren's Jewish population came to Canada. The Vancouver and the Toronto beaches had, written on the beach, the dogs and these people are not allowed. So I think those kinds of things have really taken 100 or so years to be able to overcome. We will continue to work with government in a peaceful manner as a citizen of this country, because this is country that we have contributed, gave it our youth, and also I think people are contributing at different levels. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach that needs to be taken from the government. The government has to modify its policies so that we know that it is just policy, it's fair to all people and not just pinpoint one particular group of people. Because yesterday it was Jews, today it's Muslims, and tomorrow it will be the rest of the minorities and immigrants, who will really face this particular issue for years to come.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for sharing your experiences and sharing your knowledge and expertise. It keeps taking me back to when I was growing up in the 90s here, when my mom did not wear her salwar kameez because she was not comfortable wearing it outside. Even when she had to go to the store, she would always wear pants. And going back to what Amar Saab said, is that don't change who you are because that's what is expected, but that's what we've been doing for a very long time. And that is changing. It makes me hopeful hearing you talk. It makes me hopeful that we have these platforms where we can have these conversations openly now, which we did not have when we were growing up. These are conversations like Sayed Saab just said, that intergenerational trauma, the next generation, we carry that with us. Saima, we saw what you mentioned in university. I've seen it too. I've seen that happening in university, but we never talked about these things. There was no social media to have these conversations. But today we have social media to have these conversations. We have these platforms. So we are moving forward, absolutely moving forward. And I am so, so proud of all of you for the work that you're doing to make yourself heard and to make the needs of the community heard. And that includes myself as well. I'm not Muslim, but I am brown and I am a minority in this country. And I feel the same pain, the same, the stress, the same challenges. And I think my daughter would face the same challenges that any Muslim child would face. So thank you so very much again.
Thanks, you,
Ruth, for having us. Really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.